Tell me the truth. No bullshit.
We've had some amazing discussions, some wonderful interviews, and I think one today is as of paramount importance as it is also her debut co-production as well, which is amazing, called Girls Will Be Girls. And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Richa Chadha on Filme Shilmy. So, Richa, a warm welcome to you on filmishilmy.com. It's wonderful to have you as always.
Thank you, Anush. Thank you. I'm really happy to do this interview also as a producer for the first time with you.
I know. I mean, it's really wonderful, honestly. I think when I read up first about Girls Will Be Girls, when I saw the film, I think it was such a relatable film in so many ways. Now,
Yeah.
as relatable as it was for me as an audience, for you as a producer, um, I guess it must have been an instinctive yes and a very instinctive decision for you to really come on board. What was the process like for you?
I actually, Shuchi and I are college batchmates. We were classmates. So we sort of go back a long way. We made our first student films together, which was a documentary. Then I acted in her submission film for AFI. So we've actually, it's kind of on point and on plan to want to do our first big things together. So it's not so much about me saying yes to it and coming on board as a producer, but me figuring out like 5 years ago, okay, you got your script ready. Come, let me now start producing. Let's make some calls. Let's go to a film bazaar and try and pitch it and try and get co-producers. So we sort of built this together. Um, and the script, of course, is all her, and uh, it's gone through several script labs. In fact, COVID actually helped us in that we got more time to prep and make it better and polish it. And it's very relatable to anybody who grew up in India. Of course, this film with our landlines and our parents hawk-eyed watching us trying to be protective and trying to look at our dating life, from a very microscopic lens. So those bits were always very interesting to me. And I wanted to tell a story which was, I mean, I knew that the first thing that we will produce, even Ali and Ali, of course, I was dating him at the time, but I didn't know that we would, get married and then produce together and then reproduce together. But it was, uh, well, you must ask him about how he came on board, but we were kind of, sold on this from the word go.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm really happy it's having the reception that it is in the UK. I was a little bit worried that maybe non-Asians will not get to understand the film, but after watching the screening at Sundance and watching everything else, the way it's unfolding, it's quite positive.
Mm. And I think
Mm.
what really helps, and I think when I interviewed Preeti as well, actually, we spoke about the fact that, the script itself, it's so sensitive in its approach. And I
Yeah.
think what I really liked about it is that, it's not glorifying trauma, because I feel like a lot of times nowadays, especially when it comes to coming of age stuff, where we've seen scripts which are so heavy emotionally, but here it's very touch and go. And I think that's enough for you to feel the impact of what the emotions are and what the story is. So creatively, when you have a script like that, because you've known Shuchi, the director, for so many years, uh, do you feel like that in a way makes the process of your journey as a producer slightly easier in that sense, because you're kind of aware of the skills and what they're bringing to the table as a creative personality?
Uh, of course, I mean, look, Shuchi is special, and that's something you can't miss from when I saw her in college, I knew that and she was always very clear that I want to be a filmmaker, and this is why I'm studying this, etc. But I feel uh, that the strength of the story is actually in the fact that it's so sublime and so understated and so sort of measured and beautiful and tender. I always wonder if a man had written the script, would the narrative have shamed or judged Preeti's character a lot more, when the school bully starts chasing her, or would her parents have only sort of abandoned her when they get called at school, and that your daughter is having relations with someone, and those kind of things which are very normal to the Western society in terms of how teenagers should behave. But here,
Mm,
not so much. And even if it is, it's not something we openly want to acknowledge. So even the narratives that come out of India about teenage sexuality or coming of age things are often, it has to be packaged with, oh, look, these rich kids going to this posh school are doing drugs in the toilet and making out. And, this is sort of about a very normal experience. A girl who has healthy curiosity um, wants to go look it up in an internet cafe and wants to kiss a guy and wants to do it right. And
mm.
that's even a poster. So it's interesting. I'm really happy that we got to do this.
And that's the funny thing is because even growing up in UK and the school life here, it felt very much real. It felt very relatable in so many ways. Even as
Really, I was wondering about that.
yeah, it really did. Because the thing is, it's a very universal thing, right? Like, I mean, if you think about coming of age, like of course in India, there is a difference, like in terms of the growing up that we've had here and of course in India. But I
Yeah.
it's that whole universal theme of trying to self-discover and, sexuality and all of that. I mean, I literally brought this up in my interview with Preeti as well. Like we had a very beautiful film called How to Have Sex, which released last year. And again, it was very subtle in its approach,
I
which
think it was a Cannes, the film.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. It also premiered
Is
at
it
London.
British too?
Yes, correct, correct. That's the one.
Interesting.
And it was very interesting to see that whole self-discovery. In fact, I'm gonna use this actually as a segue to my next part because I feel like right now this film, Girls Will Be Girls, has come at a very opportune moment where I think sex education for men in particular is of paramount importance. I mean, Richard, we've been seeing what's happening and it's been awful. So for you as well, for you to really champion this as a producer, because see, as an actor, you're still kind of in a way at the mercy of scripts coming your way. But when you're a producer, you're the one who can actually make decisions on what you want to greenlight in terms of projects and the messaging that can go through art, the art medium. How much has it made you more determined now, I think, for you to tell more stories? Because you were championing this as an actor before anyway, right? When it comes to strong.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course, but it's not, I mean, those scripts are so few and far in between. I would say that I've tried to, play these characters in all the projects that I've done, but sometimes you don't get the opportunity. I think Masaan and Madam Chief Minister and Section 375, these are things that looked at gender intersectionality from a pretty close lens.
Hmm.
But other than that, it's not been so many. And if people ask me why I do fewer films, it could be because there are fewer films in which women have things to do other
Hmm.
than just, sing and look pretty. They need to be more empowered and be a part of the narrative in a more real way. Uh, as a producer, I mean, I will strive to tell these stories more often than not. Maybe somewhere along the way, someone will tell me that, oh, you need to balance what you're putting out in the world and need to make more commercial things sometimes. But let's see what happens. But I think both Ali and I are very committed because this is also a great opportunity for us to showcase to the audience what our brains are like, what we think as artists. And maybe at a later date, we can write, we can direct, we can get into spaces that we haven't so far. But definitely, these stories are the need of the hour. They don't always have to be about sloganeering or some a revolution that's very in your face. They can be quiet and transgressive and have really an impact where there is a change of heart in the audience. And that's what one can hope for, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. No, very, very well said, actually. And I think like, has there ever been a sense of internal conflict that you've gone through as an actor, Richa? Because I'm sure you've probably has there ever been a time where you've in a way had to do things which you've not been proud about or not been happy about? And how
I'm
have
not,
you?
I mean, I've not done it out of unhappiness or not done it with a lack of pride, but I've definitely done films where I did, maybe not agreed with maybe the lyrics of a song that I've had to dance to, maybe the outfit of the character that I'm playing, maybe I've questioned the need for a long kiss at
Mm,
that point, or, I mean, and you really have to sort of switch off your brain and be like, am I being objectified in this moment? And then being like, hey, but this is my job. I have to act. This is acting, and I have to act and get out of it here today. So there have been those moments, but each of those moments, I think, have been just been lessons for me, and I've sort of not gone down that road again.
mm,
Of course, you don't know when you sign a film, you're not entirely sure of how it will turn out,
mm,
B, what the true intentions of the filmmakers are and such. So you only, especially when you're young, you're trying to just figure out your way. You're not from the industry, you're an outsider. You're just trying to do all kinds of things to figure out what works for you. So there, I would say there's definitely been times when uh, I'm not been happy about it, but I've definitely not agreed with it,
mm.
sometimes. And you just have to, they'll just be like, hey, but it was in the script. And you're like, but it wasn't there in this way. And maybe now it just seems like they're like, no, but this is the story. And then you have to do it. So one of the reasons I also became a producer was to have more creative control about, on the stuff that we were doing.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
not immediately, but later, maybe Ali and I, if we start to act and stuff that we are producing also, it will be different from this,
Yeah.
from what's currently circulating or floating in the market.
Oh,
For sure.
absolutely. No, I agree
Yeah.
with that. And I've often said this to you as well, Richard, that what really fascinates me the most about your craft actually as an actor is that you've often done roles which have gone through a rough time. They've gone through a gamut of emotions which have been very harsh, I would like to say. But then somehow you've always had a golden heart in all the characters that you've played. I mean, I remember watching Heeramandi, and that really cemented that perspective for me. And I'm actually really glad that you've done that because, I feel like, especially, I mean, even if we look back at Meena Kumari and all these other actresses who have really beautifully played tragedy on a more grandiose scale, you've always been that relatable face. They've been that relatable name that does that.
Yeah.
Again, do you feel like somewhere there's also, it kind of comes from a very personal space as well, where you've also been a very compassionate person through difficult circumstances in your life too?
Thank you for saying that. I'm not really consciously thought about it, but I guess in any actor's life, our job is to humanize the character. Like
Yeah.
what when you see Joaquin Phoenix play the Joker, why does it strike out and stand out as a performance that's deeply moving and cathartic in some way? And why does it look like art? Because it comes from a place which seems personal, where you see what the character's gone through, and in that sense, not to glorify it, you also see them totally get twisted and lose it, but
Mm,
uh, you
mm,
humanize those parts. I mean, I think that's what an actor can strive to do, to humanize those parts. But rest assured, if I get like the role of a serial killer or like a hardened criminal, I will do my best to not to of course I'll go the extra length to show that circumstances make a criminal and nobody's born a criminal, but at the same time I don't think in any way that I will glorify violence or you
mm,
know yeah. So that's been important to me because people are people, and the more stories you tell about people, the easier it gets for
mhm.
everyone to understand each other.
Mm. And I think
Yeah.
what's also going through, what I think what the industry is going through right now, I think, especially in Hindi, we're trying to, in a way, find that identity. You know what I mean? Of Hindi cinema. Like, for example, the re-releases that have been happening have been amazing to watch. Like, it's been great to go back in a nostalgic trip. But I think somewhere also we're trying to, like, when before the pandemic, there was that whole phase where social dramas and social comedies were doing really well. And I think
Mm.
some of those have tried to do that again, but they've not been working. I think there's been a bit of a a bit of a bit of a lull phase in terms of finding that identity of what cinema means, especially in the Hindi sort of
I don't
area.
know, it's been confusing actually. I think it's also very confusing for filmmakers and producers. They don't know what to place their bets on anymore. The formula stuff isn't working with like the 15 songs and shot in London, you know the type, and sequels and sequels and sequels, and that stuff's also not been working. The hardcore action with no brain has also not been working. But at the same time, some really strange uh, horror comedies are working. There's some like hyper masculine stuff that's been working.
Hmm.
Uh, and of the hyper masculine stuff, what I really enjoyed, of course, it was Shah Rukh Khan, was Jawan. I really enjoyed it because there were still elements of social context in it. Like,
Hmm.
so I would think that this identity crisis could be an identity crisis that society at large is going through here, or even in the West, um, where you don't know who's going to show up to the theater eventually. Like,
Yeah.
are people just going to watch it on Netflix? Do tickets need to be cheaper? What are the stories we need to tell? What makes for a good movie? What do we want a communal viewing for? Like, what do we want to go out?
Sure.
I'm going for a movie. What about that? Like, how does that work?
Sure. And I think this is a good way to link this back to Girls Will Be Girls, because obviously it's going to be releasing here in UK. How do you hope to find the market in India? I mean, have you decided like what way are you going to release it, like theatrically in India as well? Or are you sort of
Yeah,
eyeing for an OTT release? I mean, what are
we're
your
very
views on that?
we're really close to signing the dotted line, but we have sold it to a streamer here,
Oh.
and we're also going to do a limited theatrical run. Yeah.
Hmm. Again, for you as well, for something like Girls Will Be Girls, because you are a well-known name. You and Ali both are well-known names in India and of course internationally. Do you feel like now being a producer yourself, there is a sense of a battle between commercialism and sort of cinema, which is not your conventional mainstream kind of film. Have you felt that sort of a battle at all throughout this process?
I mean, no, not at all actually, because I think Fukrey is a commercial film, and that was my last cinematic outing, and it did really well at the box office. So as an actor, I'm very aware that I'll have to balance everything that I'm doing. I'll do the commercial stuff, like Heeramandi was also commercial in a sense. It
Hmm.
was as commercial as it gets with song and dance and the heavy costume. Uh, but at the same time, how do you classify a film like Girls Will Be Girls, which is so much about interpersonal relationships, but it's not your boring VP indie. It's a film that you can still watch. It's highly watchable, highly entertaining. It will make you laugh and giggle and chuckle, and it'll make you think. So, uh, I think that I don't want to put labels on the stuff that we are doing, or, but in all of the stuff that whether we produce um, thrillers or serious stuff, or maybe morose films or grim films, I think all of them will have a heart,
Hmm.
uh, for sure.
When we say diversity, right? I often see it like the West sees it as a tick box, quite frankly. That's how I see it. कि अच्छा, okay,
Mm.
Indian face डालना है, डाल दिया. Correct. हो गया काम.
Mm.
But obviously, like Ali is a very good example of doing roles which are of substance, which are actually making a difference, that have an impact as a creative as well as the social sort of messaging behind it. Do you know what
I
I'm
know,
saying?
I don't know, yeah, but I mean, I don't entirely agree, because I was watching, I think rewatching Tenet yesterday, and there was, of course, Dimple Kapadia and all for the India chapter, but there was a prominent Indian character there through and
Hmm.
through the whole film. A British actor, I forget his name now. I've seen him in several films.
Himesh Patel.
Yes, yes. So I'm saying you can't say, I think, and I don't even know if it's about ticket box stuff anymore, because when you travel to America and the UK, which is primarily where we are looking at for this kind of diversity content, uh, it's so mixed. You yourself have grown up in the UK, and you're walking down the street in London. It's so mixed and so diverse today. So I think it's just about the need of the hour and the reality of sort of immigration and people moving places to get a better life for themselves. And
Hmm.
and I've always looked out for this since, maybe goodness gracious me, and since Monsoon Wedding and other things that have traveled from here to the West. So I just think that borders will shrink eventually and people will become more and more adept at understanding each other.
Yeah, no, valid point. Absolutely. And I think on a final note, because obviously I think I'm very excited. I think after Girls Will Be Girls going forward, with your production house Pushing Button Studios,
Yeah.
you've got an amazing lineup of content as well in the slate, after Girls Will Be Girls. And I know it's quite a lot to talk about, but if you could also maybe give some more insight onto the films that you've chosen to produce, and I know you've spoken about them as well in the interview a little bit about your ethos or the production house, but again, what can we look forward to in terms of the films that you've chosen to back, and how do you think it can really, impact you as a creative and satisfy you as an artist as well?
I'm just trying to tell stories, yeah, from India that have a global audience. I'm not averse to any kind of storytelling at the moment, but I find that making them palatable, like Girls Will Be Girls, gives them greater access. Uh, and I want to stay away from hard-hitting cliches, and actually do stuff that's more transformative and, can touch the heart really. Um, Currently, we have a show that we are talking to a major production house for. Again, it's about a chef trying to revive a dying cuisine.
Wow.
Uh, and then it's a family story. It's about the story of a family that's trying to essentially preserve this recipe, and the younger generation wants to have nothing to do with it. They want to start a takeaway business, and the classic generational conflict, but also the reality of what happens to a country maybe 75 years after it's been independent. What kind of identity crisis does a country go through?
Hmm.
And then um, there's, of course, this thing that we're working on, which was in the slate, called Papita, which takes a greater look at sort of the new paparazzi culture that has come in India and how much of everything has become so transactional. So I think exciting times ahead for us as creators, and it'll be really, really interesting.
Yes, no, oh, you know what? As you were describing to them, I was literally like nodding my head so profusely because I was very curious to see how they'll do. And I love the topics that you've chosen. I think this is it. I think, like you said, and I'm so glad you've decided to do that, Richard, because I think people are tired of watching very hard, intense stories. I think people want stories which gives hope, that offer a sense of light in their lives, because it's such a dark times that we're living in. Even Girls Will Be Girls also has light. It has hope as well as a film, right?
Yeah, it's all about how what your intent is. Like Masaan was a hard-hitting story. It had so much depth at the heart of it, loss, despair, grief, but it ends on a hopeful note, and it gives you a sense of optimism, and it lifts your spirit in the end with the song, etc. So yeah, I mean, well, we can go on and on talking about this, but essentially, want to tell stories which have like their heart in the right place and make people think and ponder. That's
Absolutely.
what I
Well,
want.
and you've always done that with your acting roles, and I'm glad that that's also now sort of transpiring in the production sort of
Thank you.
films that you're choosing. But it's so
I
wonderful.
was I want to tell you I was very pleased to see your message, but I was like, I'm going to reply to him right after this feed, and then it was gone. So sorry, but thank you. Thank you
No,
for
of
like
course. I'm genuinely so happy because I feel like I've been a small, tiny, weeny part of this journey that you've of this big journey that you've had. And I feel like it's really wholesome. I think when I saw that you were producing, I genuinely was so happy because I feel like, okay, this is going to be very fascinating to see because I've loved your work as an actor. And I think you're going to be doing a great job. You and Ali both actually in the production. So wishing you both all the very best for Girls Will Be Girls and of course all the upcoming projects, Richard. And I can't wait to catch up with you super soon again.
thank you. Thank you, Anuj. I hope to be able to travel soon. See
Yeah,
you.
hopefully see you soon for sure. All right.
Yes.
Take care, Richa.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Anuj. Bye.